In this video, we're going to be looking at the brand new CASTRA LED floodlight from LUCECO, including its innovative adjustment method. If you're interested in outside lighting, how it's covered in the building regs, and how these fittings meet those requirements, please check out our free CPD on Part L over on eFIXX.co.uk. LED floodlights have become something of a commodity product in recent years, and it can become quite tricky for a manufacturer to get their own version to stand out in a crowd. So how have LUCECO tackled this challenge? Well, partly by listening to feedback from installers and then incorporating these suggestions for improvements into their relaunched CASTRA floods, but also by rethinking the installation and adjustment process, thus making these floods far more appropriate for domestic use. We'll get to that in a moment. Many manufacturers take quite a utilitarian approach to their LED floods. They make them square, they make them ugly, and they make them cheap, giving the effect that they were designed perhaps in one of the less affluent states of Soviet-era Russia. Not so with LUCECO. Instead of going for the traditional square-faced fitting, they've thought about form as well as function, and designed their fitting with some thought as to what it looks like when it's mounted on a domestic property. So they've got a front that, instead of being just square, has these chamfered edges. All the control gear is contained within the body of the fitting, meaning that you don't have a large ugly section at the bottom of the fitting to contain all the equipment. Also, instead of the traditional C-shaped bracket on the back here, LUCECO have pretty much revolutionised the installation of the LED flood by incorporating this really clever ball joint on the end of this mounting stalk here, which has some serious advantages. The first is that it makes installation easier. You can swivel the body of the fitting completely out of the way and access the keyhole slots, so mounting is just a doddle. Then, once the fitting is installed, its true benefit becomes apparent, namely that the range of adjustment is phenomenal. The traditional LED floodlight has the bracket that, once fitted level, means that the fitting can be adjusted only in one axis. It can be tilted up or down, and that's about it. However, with this ball joint on the back, the fitting can also be adjusted from side to side, giving a real broad range of motion, meaning that the light can be more easily focused on the areas where it's required. All you've got to do is undo the thumb screw on the back, line the fitting up with where you want it to point, and then tighten the screw back up. Not a spanner or even a screwdriver required for adjustment. So neat. And finally, it just looks so much better than the traditional bracket on the back of a flood, lending it a more elegant and refined look once it's been installed. Another major benefit of this fitting is the amount of different options that are available for it. The fittings can come with or without PIR, and also in a range of power ratings and lumen outputs. 10 watts giving around 1000 lumens, 20 watts giving around 2000, 30 delivering about 3000, and 50 watts outputting about 5000 lumens. And I'm sure you're way ahead of me telling you that that means the fittings are delivering around 100 lumens per watt, giving them a really solid rating for efficacy. In the 10 to 30 watt outputs, the fittings are available with colour temperatures of either a warm 3000 Kelvin or a cooler 5000 Kelvin, and the 50 watt version is available in 5000 Kelvin. So in short, whatever the look of the property, the required illumination level and security considerations, there's going to be a fitting to suit your needs. Just while we're on security and thinking about the PIR sensor, there's a couple of good features and benefits to that as well. Very often when manufacturers make a floodlight, they'll state that it has a certain IP rating. 65 is the norm, but what's a little less obvious is that a lot of the time the PIR has a different, lower IP rating, perhaps IP44, meaning that the fitting as a whole doesn't have the same level of protection across all its different elements. However, the CASTRA fitting from LUCECO has the same IP rating for both the luminaire element and the PIR as well, meaning that you can be confident it'll survive the elements in an outdoor setting as you'd expect. Many PIR controlled floods have an option where switching them off and on a couple of times will override the sensor and leave the fitting permanently on, and that's pretty useful, but if you forget to reset it, you can end up accidentally leaving the fitting on night and day till you notice what you've done. Well, the CASTRA goes one step further by having a dawn to dusk mode instead, meaning that you can override the fitting when it's dark and you want to leave it on, but then when it gets light the next morning, the fitting will turn off again, thus saving electricity. It's much more efficient. Another nice little detail on this fitting is the diffuser on the front of the LEDs. Again, on cheaper fittings, this will just be a sheet of clear glass or plastic, and that can mean that the LED source in the centre there can get a little intense for the human eye. The fact that on the CASTRA, the front has this textured finish helps to diffuse the light more effectively and reduces the effects of glare from the fitting. That's a really important and often overlooked feature on a fitting like this one that could be used to illuminate anything from a garden to a driveway. So we said at the start of the video that LED floods are something of a commodity product and that manufacturers have their work cut out to produce a fitting that stands out in a crowded marketplace. Well, I think it's fair to say that with this refreshed reboot of their LED flood, LUCECO have managed to do just that, by focusing on those small but critical details that make this fitting a solid choice for your installation. But as always, we want to hear from you. Do you think this is a better looking flood than most of the competition out there? Are you intrigued to see how the adjustable ball joint improves your installation work? Will you be installing these fittings in the near future? As always, please leave your thoughts and questions in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching.